welcome everybody to this Pathways Forum called Can Rights of Nature Drive Transformation? Perspectives from Community-Based Research Projects and Political Initiatives. And because, I guess from the title you can guess that this forum is about rights of nature, don't hesitate to share where you're from and if there are any rights of nature movements near you in the chat that you've heard of or potentially even participated in. And so before we get right into it, I have the pleasure of letting Pavel Kambersky, a colleague from the Pathways Initiative that you might have seen or met before, where you can give a short introduction of the forum before diving into our invited speakers' talk.
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks Rosie. So we're the Future Earth Pathways Initiative, that's more understandable for our names. And as this forum will focus on the transformative potential of rights of nature and the role in supporting them, we won't be spending too much time explaining what rights of nature are in detail. So on my side, I will just say that giving rights to nature means recognizing that ecosystems and natural communities have an independent and inalienable right to exist and flourish. And this is in contrast to most current legal systems around the world where nature is considered property, something that can be owned, used, and potentially damaged. And also, before we begin, I'd like to share 3 short contextual elements to help frame our upcoming discussion. So first, rights of nature is a relatively new movement and legal concept. It first appeared in Western legal thought in 1972 when US law professor Christopher Stone published his now quite famous article, Should Trees Have Standing? And then the first actual rights of nature laws came over 30 years later, first at the municipal level in the US, and then in 28, Ecuador became the first country to include rights of nature in its constitution. Since then, the movement has grown exponentially. Between 2006 and 2024, more than 550 initiatives have been registered globally, according to the Eco Jurisprudence Monitor, and that number is still rising. And even here in France, where I'm speaking from today, dozens of local initiatives are emerging. Even in Paris, where we're located, the municipality is considering granting rights to the river Seine. And secondly, I'm saying even in France, because the rights of nature movement has only recently gained traction in Europe. And in fact, it has been largely driven from the peripheries, both geographically and culturally. The first countries to implement rights of nature were Latin American, and the movement has been deeply shaped by indigenous worldviews and relationship with nature. Many indigenous communities even refer to the rights of nature as the rights of Mother Earth. And many of the most influential rights of nature cases have taken place in the so-called Global South, in Bolivia, New Zealand, India, Colombia, are the most famous, most important rights of nature cases. And in this list, the US also has to be cited since there's quite a strong rights of nature movement at the local level there. The movement only recently arrived in Europe with the Mar Menor Lagoon, which received widespread media attention in recent years. And third and finally, all of this is part of the reason why rights of nature is often seen as a tool for socio-ecological transformation. Some have argued that current Western legal systems are fundamentally limited because they view nature as not as a subject of law, but more as an object to be owned or exploited. In contrast, it's argued that rights of nature could offer something fundamentally different, kind of a legal revolution that reintegrates humans into nature and redefines our shared rules of living, including non-human beings as well. Even the IPBES, in its Transformative Change Assessment Report, named the rights of nature as a potential pathways for transformation. And so I quote, rights of nature is increasingly seen as an emerging legal paradigm based on diverse ecological values to overcome Western and neoliberal legal models that prioritize individual over collective well-being. And yet, the concept of rights of nature is also being the target of critiques, which can be summarized in three categories very briefly. The first is that um, some scholars and policymakers have argued that rights of nature is redundant or even incompatible with existing legal frameworks because they point out that nature is already protected under environmental laws and that the focus should maybe be on enforcing those rather than creating new rights. And others have warned that rights of nature could potentially conflict with human rights or property rights in some situations. The second category of critiques point out to frequent challenges around legal enforcement. In many cases around the world, rights have been granted to natural entities, but there are no clear enforcement mechanisms. And even when these mechanisms exist, sometimes they're hard to apply, either because of legal ambiguity, lack of resources, or really uncertainty about how and when to do so. Thirdly, some scholars question whether rights of nature are truly transformative or maybe more symbolic, because they argue it can be used for greenwashing or for co-opting indigenous ideas, and therefore allowing governments or corporations to appear progressive without actually changing their harmful practices. And so with these three elements in mind, I think we can begin today's forum and therefore ask ourselves, can rights of nature truly drive transformation? And what role can science play in supporting this shift? And we'll explore these questions through an inter and even transdisciplinary lens. And now I'm handing back to Rosie, who will introduce our speakers and open the presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pavel. So, as usual, this forum is divided into two parts. So the first part of it is for our speakers' presentations today. And so the first speaker was originally Jenny Garcia-Ruales, a PhD candidate in anthropology at the Philipps University of Marburg. And so she had kindly originally accepted to talk about how scientific knowledge can support indigenous communities in the Ecuadorian Amazon as they work together towards establishing rights of nature. But unfortunately, for personal reasons, she could not attend today. So if ever you're interested in her work, you can look her up. And we've created a reading list with some of her articles. And if ever any of you have experience in working with indigenous communities or in the Amazon, working on rights of nature, would be very happy to hear about it in the discussion. And so that means we'll directly start with our two other speakers. So we'll have a first presentation from Victor David, who is a researcher in environmental law and sustainable development at the Mediterranean Institute of Biology and Ecology in France. So he'll discuss his experience working as a researcher on considering sharks and marine turtles as natural legal entities in the Loyalty Islands. And then Edgar Mora, a political activist and former mayor of Curridabat from 2007 to 2018 and former Minister of Education in Costa Rica, who provides his experience as a policymaker who has implemented governance strategies and secured political recognition for multiple species like bees, bats, hummingbirds, and even butterflies as citizens of his town. So after each presentation, you'll have roughly 5 minutes to ask clarifying questions. So questions purely related to your understanding of their presentation. And you can ask these questions in the chat during the presentations, but also verbally after each presentation. And please keep your more kind of discussion questions for later on, because the second part of this forum is dedicated to having a more open discussion about their work and your experience. So during the second part of the forum, we'll be able to discuss any general questions you may have, but we also had one small question for you to answer now, and we'll see what you respond in the discussion as well. So you should be able, let me just get it up for you. And so you now should be able to see it on your screen, and I'll let you quickly answer this question, and we'll discuss your responses later on after the presentations. And so while you're quickly finishing up that question, I think I'll leave the floor to Victor David to get his slides and hear his presentation.
Thanks, Rosie. I'll try to share my screen as I did. Voilà, is it okay? Do you have
Yes, all good.
Okay,
Perfect.
good. D'accord, merci. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, want to thank Future Health and Rosie for asking me to present today some of my work, research work and results that I had in New Caledonia. And so I'll be talking about the making of natural entities as sharks and marine turtles in New Caledonia as legal entities, which is a way of operationalization of rights of nature. I apologize for my English, it's not very good. I'm sorry, I would have wished to talk in French, but uh, I forgot all the English I knew, at least when I speak, so I can write better than speak. Sorry, then please be indulgent with me. So let's start with how I'm going to present this afternoon. I will have a few stopovers, as I say. First, I will introduce you to New Caledonia because I'm not sure that everyone is aware of what it is and where it is and why it is important for my presentation today. Then I'll of course give you a few hints into the Kanak perception of the environment. The Kanak being the indigenous people of New Caledonia, have been living there for the past at least 3,000 years. And then we'll talk about transforming the place of nature in law, in French law, from legal persons, from what I call from legal persons to natural legal entities. I'll be explaining to you the difference I see. Just to want to sure that I'm not wasting my time. So I can follow the. Okay, so let's start with New Caledonia. So I'm sure that you know, but New Caledonia is an archipelago east of Australia and north of New Zealand. We are 2 hours from Auckland and 2 hours from Brisbane. It is a French territory. It has been a French territory since 1853. And maybe you heard recently that, you know, recently, for the past 50 years, there's been a pro-independence movement going on in New Caledonia. But today it is still a French territory, part of the French Republic, but with a large autonomy. It is a very large autonomous place, as we'll see. And for some details, New Caledonia has 3 provinces, almost 28 Melanesian languages are spoken in New Caledonia. And of course, French is understood by everyone. But there are the local people, the Kanak people, have 28 languages. And as you can see, the Loyalty Islands province, which is the place where I worked, is the 3 islands on the eastern side of the main island. So there is Uvea on top, Lifu in the middle, and Mare in the south. They form the Loyalty Islands province. So that's for quickly to present New Caledonia. A few words on the population composition in New Caledonia. As you can see, the largest community is the Kanak people. They are today, the census is from 2019, but let's say that today it's almost 45%, which makes them still a minority in New Caledonia. So the problems arise from their minority situation. And the other major communities are the European community and European descendants, which are almost a quarter of the population. And the other largest community is the people from Wallis and Futuna, which is another French territory in the Pacific, who have come to live for economic reasons mainly in New Caledonia. What is also interesting is to keep in mind that almost 20% of the population consider themselves of several communities and or as Caledonians, not French, not Kanak, not anything. So and they are made of all communities actually. So that's the population of New Caledonia picture. So it also explains why the Kanak people want independence and also why their point of view, their culture, their history must be considered into the legal system, which is not much the case. Things have started changing since 1988 and after a civil war and 1998, but there's still way to go. And I'm sorry. Wow. And a last slide on New Caledonia, you have to keep in mind also to see how it works. So from it's a vertical organization. Even if France is a centralized state, New Caledonia, as I said, is a very autonomous territory with its own Congress and its own government. It's also a sort of federal system that doesn't say it is one, but it's a very federal organization with 3 provinces which have their own assembly and their own president. And of course, there are 33 municipalities that make up New Caledonia. And besides this, you have also to keep in mind another element is the hierarchy of norms in New Caledonia. Donc everything in blue in the pyramid is from France, and everything in orange is the local New Caledonian decisions. For those who are not familiar with the hierarchy of norms, it means that the norms that are at the bottom must respect everything that is above them. So they cannot be contrary to the rules above. For instance, the provincial deliberations, which interest us today, cannot be against general principles of law or the loi du pays, which are locally drafted legislation, and of course international treaties that France may have signed, and of course the French Constitution and everything that is considered as the block of constitutionality. Voilà, that's for the New Caledonia part. I'm sure. I hope it helps to understand the coming elements. Then there is the Kanak perception of the environment and the unitary principle of life, which was major. I lived in New Caledonia for 20 years and started working. I did my PhD thesis there on New Caledonia, and it happens that the research institute I was working was asked by the Loyalty Islands province, which is one of the 3 provinces, as I said, to draft their environmental law. Because one day I presented them with in 2012 actually I presented them with during a seminar of what the New Zealand government has done that was recognizing the Whanganui River as a legal person, and so they were very much interested in that piece of news, and they asked me to help them work in that direction. So that is how I started working closely with elected people, with customary authorities, with administrative people, NGOs, and so as to help them draft their environmental law. because the French environmental law does not apply in New Caledonia and does not apply in its provinces. They have every province as its own environmental law. So what is the Kanak perception of the environment? It can be easily summarized is that Kanak people do not differentiate between nature and humans. For them, nature and humans are one, and man is part of nature. Man is not above nature. Man is not besides nature. It is within nature, sort of. So for them, it is clear that you cannot dominate nature, as we could read in French philosophy or Western thought. So nature is not to be dominated. It is a sovereign organism, which the term sovereign is very important because it means there is nothing above nature for them. And so they transformed this way of thinking into what they themselves designated as the unitary principle of life. So man and nature are one. The earth does not belong to me. I belong to the earth. And it is really what makes them Kanak. That's what they told me during so many interviews and discussions we had. So how to transform this unitary principle of life into law? So that's what we did finally. We were working with them in April 2016. The Loyalty Islands Province Assembly adopted its environmental code, the first version of its environmental code, and in that environmental code, they introduced the principle of the unitary principle of life into law. So one of the sections of the code says that the unitary principle of life, which means that man belongs to the natural element, etc., is the founding principle of Kanak society. And in order to take account of this conception of life, certain elements of nature may be recognized as having a legal personality with the rights of their own. So that was the principle of life that entered French law. And then we had to put this principle into action, if I could say. So during the many discussions we had with local authorities, with customary authorities, of course, they mentioned sharks and turtles because they were so that much important in their culture. And they were also thinking of other endangered elements that could be retained because they wanted something that goes beyond the status of protected species. That was a clear demand from them. They really wanted something that, because as you, Pavel mentioned, environmental law exists and there are protected species in environmental law, but still doesn't work always. So they said, we have some natural elements that are above protected species, so that you have to find something new. So that's what we worked for a few years on that. And it happened that in 2023, the second version of the environmental code was published in March 2024. But to achieve that, we had to work on the operationalization of the unitary principle of life. So what we decided, we prepared some local legislation, which was clearly adopted and published into the Journal officiel de la Nouvelle-Calédonie, which is a local official gazette. And the text was creating the status of legal entities was adopted in June 2023. And what does the new article say? They say that they are introducing a new legal status in the territory of Loyalty Islands Province. Of course, that's one of the limits of the experience. It is limited to the Loyalty Islands Province. In application of the unitary principle of life, elements of nature, living species, and natural sites listed in 242.17 are recognized as natural legal entities They are recognized as having fundamental rights. They do not have duties, and each natural entity subject of law has standing. So as you can see, all these words, all these wordings were made to give rights of nature something concrete in at least in New Caledonia. And if you're interested, I can answer question on that, because and it explains why the change from legal persons to natural entities is all about this. And of course, the section 242.17 mentions the two first species that were recognized as natural entities in the Loyalty Islands province, and others were to be designated later on. So once we have decided that we create a status of natural legal entities, decide that sharks and turtles are the first to deserve this new status, we had to define the legal regime that goes with this status. So we enumerated a few fundamental rights. And one of the first right is not to be the property of any state, province, human group, or individual. No, as humans, we do not belong to a state. And we wanted the same status for natural elements. And if I may, I would like to come back on this Article 16. As you can see, elements of nature, living species, and natural sites are individually mentioned because we chose in the Loyalty Islands province not to speak about nature, the whole of nature. Because we thought it was not, even if Ecuador has done it or Bolivia has done it, in terms of legal application or a day-to-day application of law, recognizing nature as a whole as a legal person is not a good thing. So we thought it would be better to address natural elements. So these natural elements have a few fundamental rights, and I'm not going to enumerate all of them. The thing is that we try to guarantee the new legal entities that everyone respects them as such. And by when saying no state, company, human group, or individual may engage in any activity that violates these rights and freedoms, it means that if you do violate these rights and freedoms, the penal sanctions are harsher than if we are in simple environmental law. But as I said, it was a short-lived experience, unfortunately, because because the French state challenged the Loyalty Islands province deliberation in court at the end of after 6 months after the text was adopted. The French Conseil d'État, which is the highest administrative court in France, delivered an advice considering that the creation of a new category of legal entities belongs to civil law and falls beyond the province's jurisdiction in environmental law. So that's the frontier between what is environmental law and what is civil law. And we read, of course, all the hierarchy of norms that I mentioned, and the team that worked with the Loyalty Islands felt that we were on the right track, but the Conseil d'État did not think that way, because for them, creating a new category of legal entities, whether they are natural or not, belongs to civil law, and that's why they said it's not to a province to do that. So the tribunal administratif de Nouméa declared the chapter of the deliberation on natural legal entities as null and void in July 24. So it happened. So the text was in the legal books for 1 year. So that's a good thing. So we were sad, of course, when the Conseil d'État cancelled, the tribunal administratif cancelled the text. Everyone was cancelled. But however, there are some interesting takeaways from this experience. First, it allowed Kanak cultural beliefs and customary law to become part of the French contemporary legal system, which was not the case for so many decades since the beginning of colonization. It showed that natural elements can hold legal rights of their own in French law and have standing in courts through their human face. That's another interesting point. And of course, it allowed the demonstration that transformation of law is possible. So what is this whole story of transforming the law? It's actually transforming the place of nature in law. For that, I want to really summarize what we are talking about. Pavel mentioned that there are objects and subjects, and this is exactly the summa divisio that we have from Roman colonization 2,000 years ago. So in law, you have either subjects or objects, and only legal persons can be subjects, and only humans or groupings of humans can be legal persons. Everything else is an object and could be a property. That's what the legal system is entirely based upon for so many centuries. And from this vision, which kept nature and elements as property, public or private, change was introduced, and Pavel talked about Christopher Stone, and the rights of nature movement started transforming the law. So we had what I call the transitional summa divisio. And in the transitional summa divisio, under the category of persons who are subjects, they have introduced a category of natural entities. And it is based on this transitional summa divisio that since 2008, from Ecuador in 2008 to the UK River House in 2025, nature elements became legal persons. And of course, they have, if you go through court decisions or legislation, you can read that rivers or mountains or volcanoes have the same rights, duties, and liabilities of legal persons. And when we were working on sharks and turtles in New Caledonia, of course, Pavel also mentioned the objections against rights of nature. So we also had that in mind. And there was the example in India where the Ganges River and Yamuna River were recognized as legal persons with rights, duties, and liabilities of a legal person by the Uttarakhand High Court. What happened is that one of the human face who was designated as the human face of the Ganges appealed against the court decision, saying that if someone drowns in the Ganges, I'm as a human face going to be responsible for that. So the Supreme Court of India decided to suspend the Uttarakhand High Court decision. So Ganges is not officially anymore a legal person, but it rang a bell. We said that we could not take this path because we are endangering the new category we have introduced, or we are thinking of introducing, to the rights of nature in New Caledonia. So what we did is to think that maybe we should find something else than this transitional summa divisio, and that's where we moved from the legal person thing to a new category of subjects of law who are natural legal entities. So it means that we are in the same level as persons, but we are not persons. Natural entities are natural legal entities. And we have to define their legal regime because, as I said, that's why we wrote that they have rights but no duties. You cannot recognize duties to sharks and turtles. You cannot recognize duties and obligations and liabilities to a volcano, to a river, or whatever you choose to. So that's why we think, and this is what I'm still working on. I'm working on a project to recognize the Mediterranean Sea as a natural legal entity. So you can have different subcategories of natural entities because there are also, you cannot give the same rights to animals, to wild animals, to a river, to a forest, to a volcano, etc. So you have It's going to be something a very sophisticated mechanism. Of course, it's not complexifying, but it's actually, I think it's simplifying things, because you make it, if you consider an ocean and a whale as the same thing, it's not going to work. So you better give different legal status for all of them. And to finish, some good news, of course, hopefully, the Conseil d'État I spoke about did not close the door to the creation of a new category of subjects of law in French law. Okay, so they just said that the Loyalty Islands province cannot do it. It is up to the New Caledonian Congress to do it. So it means that there is still room for the New Caledonian Congress to adopt a loi du pays, as they call it, the local legislation that will create that category of the framework of natural legal entities, and then leave it up to each province to decide what natural entity can benefit from this new status. Because I'm saying that because at the very time that the Loyalty Islands province, which is 98% Kanak, was recognizing sharks and turtles as legal entities, the South province of New Caledonia, which is mainly populated by non-Kanak people, decided to kill a shark because there was some fatal accidents in the New Caledonian lagoon, in the Numea lagoon. So they decided to kill every shark that showed its nose around the bay, and they killed dozens and dozens of sharks at that time. So we said we cannot force the South province to recognize sharks as legal entities. But also, if the Kanak people in the Loyalty Islands want to consider sharks as ancestors, as sacred, then they have the right to do it also. So that's why we think that creating even in today, that's why also it implies the transformation into of the law. It means that even in mainland France, in the national regime, I don't think it's a good idea to recognize individually the Seine as a legal person or natural legal entity, to use my vocabulary, to consider the Loire or to consider some mountain, the Mont Blanc, as a legal entity. I think we have to create into the French Civil Code a new category of natural legal entities besides persons and objects, and create a legal framework and leave it up to local authorities, local communities, to see what natural legal entity they want really to be considered as natural legal entities. Because as I said, considering nature as a whole or all kinds of natural elements as legal entities is not possible and not satisfying, because the most common exams that are opposed to me are you going to give rights to mosquitoes? Are you going to give rights to COVID virus? Because they are after all, they are part of nature. So that's why we choose what elements we want to recognize as natural entities, we as citizens. Voilà. Thank you, Oleti, as we say in New Caledonia, and thank you for your attention. I hope I was not too long.
Thank you very much, Victor. Does anybody have any clarifying questions? If you want, you can either lift up your virtual hands and I'll give you the floor. If not, you can ask them in the chat. So I think I've just seen a quick question in the chat, which is, have you written a paper with this proposal that the audience can find?
Yes, but they're in French. I have only written in French till now, so this is one of the first presentations I'm making in English about my work, because I didn't have the chance to, and I was really focusing on a French audience, so maybe I can translate one of those articles and try to publish them,
Cool. Okay, and then I can see someone's got their hand up. You can go ahead if you want.
Hi, Victor. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Thanks.
Ça va?
Oui.
I don't know French. I appreciate so much this discussion. I'm curious. I'm relatively new to Earth law. I'm I'm actually engaged with the Earth Law Center here in Colorado. My question is in the context of indigenous rights, and then there's certain organizations are having separate initiatives independent of indigenous laws. Have you seen the contradiction? It seems not, because really the focus was on enabling some of the unitary principles of ENACT to come in. But I was wondering if there are similar kind of initiatives elsewhere in the context of indigenous laws or principles, and how, if it contradicts with rights of nature initiatives that other organizations might be pursuing.
Thanks, Sanjay. Yeah, I really want to make it that clear. It was not a foreign idea that was, proposed to the indigenous community in the Loyalty Islands. When I first, that's why I mentioned that example, that instance. When I first presented them in a scientific seminar, I was working on environmental law. I said, this is what is happening in New Zealand for the first time. And at that time, in 2012, I have never heard of Christopher Stone. I have never heard of Ecuador or Bolivia or the Cochabamba thing in 2010. At that time in New Caledonia, it was quite isolated. There was no social media, there was no that much internet, etc. So when I heard this in the news feed from weekly news feed, I said this is very interesting. So that's when I tried to dig up things and I presented them. And in the audience there were some people from the New Caledonia, the Loyalty Islands province. And then at the end of the conference, they came and said to me, "Hey, this is what we want." And of course, the indigenous connection was there because the Maori people succeeded in obtaining this recognition of the Whanganui River as a natural, as a legal person. We also consider our nature as sacred, and if you can translate it, if they translate it into New Zealand law, why not translate it into French, at least local Caledonian law? So that's how the collaboration started, and so I always made sure that I'm not imposing on them any Western law or Western idea, even if it was modern, even if it was rights of nature. And it was a very interesting experience actually, because for instance they had another thing. They are very respectful of the next generations, the future generations. And they said, we are adopting this because they told me, David, we don't need any environmental law. We have been protecting our environment for the past 3,000 years. So we don't need it. We can go back. Then they just laughed, and of course we continued working. But there was some truth in that. There was some truth in that because they had this way of behaving with nature and considering nature, giving consideration to nature and its elements. So they say we want to give our future generations, our children and grandchildren, the same nature we enjoyed. And for that, we want to take all engagement that we should into law, because today the customary law has disappeared, has no more authority. So it has to be into formal law today, because all the customary authorities have been stripped of their justice power. They cannot punish anyone if they do not respect customary law. So it has to be into formal law that can be punished by courts and etc. So that's they said we want that. So what we want is we give our word to the future generations that we will protect them and we will protect the nature for them. And that's how. And they say how do you translate that into law? And that's when I have heard through my work of the non-regression principle in environmental law, which was, the no stepping back on environmental law, which was introduced in 2012 at the, where was that? Not in Johannesburg, but the Rio Plus 20 meeting. So I told them maybe you can introduce the principle of non-regression of environmental law into the environmental code. And they said, Bonko, go for it. And that's how we introduced the principle of non-regression. So it was answering their request. I'm not sure it's happening everywhere else where rights of nature are introduced and where indigenous people are involved. In indigenous thought, indigenous culture, maybe of inspiration to people who write the laws, but I don't want to judge. I mean, it's not my thing is better than their, or it's not that thing. Well, I don't know if I answered. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions and your answers, Lita. So I think maybe we can keep the last question that I've seen in the chat for the discussion, so we can get to so we have enough time for all of Edgar's presentation, and then we can get to the real discussion, and any questions that you have, don't worry, they won't be forgotten. So thank you,
very
Victor.
much.
You can take your slides back, and it's now
Yeah, thank you
Edgar's
all.
time. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for this invitation, and hello to the friends that I see in the audience, and also the new people that I don't know, but since we are all interested in developing these kind of frameworks and these kind of activities to improve our capacity to produce change, I consider all of you to be my friends. So I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon. So I will try to present my arguments using two different moments of the presentation. The first one will be focusing on the experience that I developed as I was mayor of Curridabat. That was between 2006, 2007, and 2018. A long period of time for a mayor, which allowed me to have different perspectives and experiences doing the same job, which is great because that long period of time came with a lot of knowledge acquired as things were developed, and also with the possibility of changing perspectives and incorporating other perspectives that were not there in the beginning. So one of the things that I usually say is that the last mayor that I was feel a lot of compassion for the first mayor that I was. And precisely because of that range of time, I think that I somehow discover the importance of these convergences between our lifestyles and nature, and the capacity of nature to improve the place, and the other way around. I mean, the dialectic between humans and non-humans in the place that we have a view to live on. It's the most important, let's say, the most important dilemma that we confront nowadays, because cities are not really returning the resources that we are extracting from the planet, and we haven't learned how to do that. We build cities to do everything else that is not the proper city building process, some people have to take care of that, but we as humanity has created this monumental work, which are cities, and cities are absorbing the resources that the planet is capable of regenerating in a certain moment of time, and we haven't figured out how to change, produce, or make or remake the cities in order for these biological components that have become biological components, how to make them in such a way that cities can give back the resources that they are taking. So this is very important to have in consideration as you are going to listen my experience in this city that is called Curridabat. I was mayor there, and we begin to call it Sweet City just because we found a lot of information that we need in order to answer to that question, which is basically how can we make or reshape a city that will add value to the planet instead of subtracting value to the planet. How can we do that? And we recognize in a moment of time that we, in our system, we don't have the answers to that question, but at the same moment and over the same place, there is another system that is operating in the opposite direction as our system is operating, and it's interoperating with us, that have a lot of answers to this question, and that is the system of pollination. So basically what we start to do in my city was to mirror the reshaping of the city through the policy, through the public policy, to the system of pollination. So we make a deal, or we have a multi-species dialogue, or we have a new engagement with another community that is living in the same place, and that community is the pollination community. So in the case of Costa Rica, that is a huge community of beings, but most importantly, native bees, hummingbirds, butterflies, bats. They really know how to deal with the question of giving back resources to the planet. And we basically...
Sorry, Edgar, I just wanted to say that I've received your slides if ever you wanted me to share them for you.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Okay, perfect. Well, we can see yours now. We couldn't see them earlier.
Please do so. Yeah. So basically, let me see. I don't see what is. Okay, maybe if you share, yeah, please, okay. Rosie. Yeah.
Let's just go through it.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which language?
Yeah. So sweet. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Okay. So basically the key concepts of this experience, as I mentioned, are what you the ones you are seeing in the screen, pollinators became the central axis of city redesign. So we recognize pollinators as firstly as agents of prosperity of the city. Then we scale up that recognition, and we ended recognizing them as citizens of the city. Something else is in the on the screen. Okay, thank you. Also, sorry, can you return? Yes, also it's important that the planning strategy, once we start to develop this dialogue with pollinators, change from a planning strategy given by the supply side to a planning strategy that began with the demand side. So basically, we were always backcasting from expected experiences, transformations, and that completely changed the way we plan for these different developments or projects in the city. We basically create a new methodology that we call enhancing the virtues of the place, that laid upon the recovering of biodiversity and ecosystem health, as well as emotional rooting. So we regard feelings and biodiversity to be infrastructure in the city. Can we go to the Sweet City Initiative slides? So this, I will say that this experience, it's policy driven by citizenry demands. These demands were rationalized through the understanding of archetypical human and non-human persona. We can talk about that in the Q&A if you wish, how we came to give non-humans personas a voice in the public policy of the city. And because of that, the city became a platform to plug in experiences that were transformative. So basically, from the goal of changing the experiences of some of these archetypical personas, we got a lot of different projects that were not there before, and basically those, or the majority of those projects, came from outside the municipality. In that way, the municipality, what we did was create a platform instead of creating a set of projects. So, and as I mentioned before, pollination interoperates as a sort of knowledge as to how return resources and add value to the planet. We can go on. So, of course, in 2013, 2014, 2015, we start to change and use a lot of infrastructure typologies that were informed by this new way of planning. Few years later, we start to listen about nature-based solutions, and basically these were from that moment ideas and projects that were let's say nature-based to improve nature in cities. So these are examples of the impact that we create those days. We can go on. So key lessons of this Sweet City platform. Feelings and biodiversity are the basic infrastructure of cities. New citizenships are essential to progress, and I would like to talk about this as we are talking about rights, and I'm talking now about experience in a city. Cities do not create rights. That is a reservation of law for the countries. So, but cities can designate citizenships, and this is a very interesting way of moving forward to the recognition of rights for nature. We can create or we can recognize nature as a political persona, even if nature or elements of nature, as Victor mentioned, have no specific rights. They can, in places such as cities, be a political persona, and they will be impacting the public policy of that place. So community activism basis for building the city vision, leadership model, focus on life opportunities, happiness and well-being. The vision for the future was inspired by nature's processes and governance by demand, as I mentioned, transforming budgets and administrative language at the same time. We can go on. So we start to envision the city as a component, or as a multidimensional component. And for those days, those dimensions that we regard to be important was biodiversity as the main infrastructure, infrastructure, habitat, coexistence, and productivity. But biodiversity was at the center of the whole operation. So this was very important for us as we start to develop the idea of the need for the center, where the profound purpose of humanity are reflected, as a place in which we should share our moment and our position with nature. So the impact of this experience, it's very transformative. We change the way we plan. We change the idea of biodiversity being subjugated to infrastructure. We recover feelings as a main component of the infrastructural capacity of the city, and we produce new knowledge for sustainable development. We can go on. So now I would like to answer the questions that were presented in front of us. Can the rights of nature drive transformation? That is the question of this forum. And I would like to say yes, of course, rights of nature can drive transformation. And I would like to answer why, how, and when. And to begin with, I will say that the first of these arguments that is presented here belongs to the way we humans have been constructing the moral framework within which we develop different levels and qualities of caring. More specifically, what we conceive as resources, what is and what is not, and for what purposes. Where do we allocate human intelligence and financial flows as means of enhancing futures? What is the scope of knowledge and upon which direction we guide science attention? What rubrics should we use to validate designs and blueprints for technological tools? And at the end of the day, what technology do we prioritize? And last but not least, what is included or excluded from governance systems? The second why, which follows in the next slide, it's an argument that suggests that the personhood of nature extends or trickles down to the routines of an ethical driven society. That means that nature becomes a political persona with a proportional capacity to influence long-range policies as well as the politics of the day in both the public and private sector and on the open community or domestic level. And the third argument to respond why implies breakthrough. As an acting person, nature is recognized for its capacity to express, to personificate self. And therefore, it is necessary it's necessary for us to alleviate this kind of strangeness when we talk about nature talking, which is one of the arguments that we hear frequently from people that do not want to recognize the rights of nature. And that is because other non-humans are capable of personifying themselves. And to argue in favor of this, maybe it's sufficient to recall that in nature, everywhere, there are structural roles that generate functions, as well as performative ones that produce balance and interactions. Nature is always expressing itself. Nature is always presenting itself, and we have enough capacity, and we have had enough capacity in the past to understand nature in ways that have been very favorable to us. We have collected a lot of information from nature in order to create professions. For instance, we didn't really invent the engineering or architecture. We were not the first ones to create houses to live. We have learned a lot, and we have had this multi-species dialogue all the time. So we need to recognize that capacity of nature to express itself and our capacity to understand what nature is expressing by using all means in our toolbox, especially when we talk about research and science. So the fourth argument of the whys, why is that I believe that nature, the rights of nature can produce or can drive transformation, follows the previous one, and basically speaks to the fact that in our saga for domination over nature, we still employ an old trick that is infiltrated within the progressive framework of nature protection, which consists of giving nature a set of conditions far below the political hierarchy, keeping nations subjugated to very harmful ways of envisioning its future. And I would like to respond the how now. And basically, I will make a single argument, and that argument is by making nature capable of reproach and approving its experience on equal terms. And what I mean with this is that what society incorporates when it recognizes a new subject of law, it is what society recognizes is its future, and it does so as a complement or adaptation element to the futures of other subjects of rights that are already acting at the center where decisions are made. Recognizing nature as a legal person alters all components of governance to enable and facilitate nature, once granted rights, to become what it can be in the future, in an arrangement of checks and balance between equals before the law. And this is the how. An example of this alteration of the components of governance can be found in education systems. My experience as Minister of Education revealed to me that in our civilization, through the intentional use of the typical framework of teaching, everything we are expected to learn at any age or stage of brain elasticity, discipline, disposition, refers to the preservation, superimposition, and durability of a single body, and that is divisible from the rest of bodies and is the human body. So the rise of nature, or on the contrary, validates, because it holds as true the uniqueness and essential importance of other bodies, and normalize the fact that human beings are one among others who observe, act, and bear witness in the multiple dimensions of an ecosystem about which we honestly know very little still. And finally, I would like to respond the when. And I will say that when is that the rights of nature drive transformation? Well, from now on and until a country or a society surrenders or disappears. This is interesting to think. For instance, in the case of societies or that have already granted nature with rights, probably the improvement of a river, let's say in Colombia, is not something that will happen automatically, but those rights granted, those rights that were granted will change the rhythm of the human interaction with that element of nature, because it will open up time for that community or that city of those institutions of governments to extend the way in which the different approaches to public policy will play in favor of that element of nature. So basically, what I'm saying is that once the rights or the condition of a citizenship is given, that allows us as a community to play in a different rhythm in our interaction with those elements of nature. And I believe that this idea of the rhythm, or this change of the rhythm, is really, really important, because one of the reasons why we are affecting nature is because we have a mismatch in the rhythm of our in the rhythm of our lifestyles and the rhythm of nature. So it's not only about configuration, it's also about rhythm, and it's also about scale. And the rights of nature are important to erase that mismatch in favor of all of us. So basically, I will like to respond to any question that you have, and I reiterate my gratefulness for being here today.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Sorry for the slides that you didn't have them at the beginning. But yeah, so I think if anybody has some short clarifying questions for on this presentation, we've got time to take a few. And if not, we can go directly to the more in-depth questions on both of the presentations. Okay, so I'll take that as a no, you don't need any clarifying questions. So I've seen that there are quite a few questions in the chat, but just before we get to that bit, we wanted with Pavel to just quickly show you the answers to the poll that we asked at the beginning of the forum. And what is quite interesting is that actually, so most people answered that they weren't necessarily very familiar with the movement, but they had heard of it before and they were curious to learn more with your presentations. And there were still quite a few people, so 5 people out of the whole people that answered that said they've studied rights of nature in their research projects, and 2 people that have said that they've participated actually on the ground on a rights of nature process. So if you have any like reactions to this poll or something that you'd like to share, that's very well accepted, and we'd be very happy to hear what you think. Oh, Jules, I think you've got a hand up. Your hand up.
Yes, I am grateful for that presentation. I had a question. I wondered, as the pollinators can't talk, how is made the recognition process politically and in administration too?
Can you repeat the question, Jules?
It was like, what is the political process to integrate the needs of pollinators?
Pollinators, yeah. Well, the political process is begins with the characterization of, as Victor mentioned, to the definition of what are the elements of nature that are going to be represented as political persona. And in the case of my city in Curridabat, we choose that political persona to be pollinators because of the reasons I mentioned. They are acting as constantly acting in favor of reproducing life and reproducing the capacity of plants, soil, and you go on with that ecosystem. So we basically, what we do is that once we learn that that the pollinators had a lot of let's say so but by acting as they do, by complying with the biological functions, they were giving us a lot of information about how to improve the place. We start to research about what they do, how they do, what they need, what is the experience that they have in the city. And we start to figure out that as we were designing changes in the experience, or for the experience of the pollinators, we also were designing improvement of experience for other members of the community. So, for instance, if we wanted to improve the visitation of parks, we discovered that creating a better environment for pollinators will also amount to what we call impartial design of the park, in terms of that park became a place where testosterone and cortisol were brought down from people that visited the place. So that impartial design of the park, from the eyes of the human visitors, were not really impartial, because the design was partialized in favor of pollinators. So we start to discover that there were a lot of different alliances between different stakeholders or citizens of the city. So, for instance, we discovered a potential alliance between pollinators and women. As we change the sidewalks, we start to call those sidewalks sweet sidewalks, because we started to plan a lot of different native flora. Pollinators were encountering pollinator corridors, and women were feeling more secure. So what we did in the local government was to highlight those kind of contributions and alliances, and because of that, and through the learning, different learning, through the research, through the use of science, we start to change, or better say, understand which were the demands of pollinators to improve their experience in the city. So basically, they were represented in the process of planning by the voice of science.
Okay, thank you.
Also some other specific implementations were, for instance, the representation of pollinators through kids, through children. So that's a use of the capacity of personification of pollinators, to the capacity of children to personify these pollinators was something important to prevent and to promote the change of the place, in order to have better experience for pollinators. And that, as I mentioned before, had an output, or result for everybody else. Other important component of all this was that we, from the eyes of pollinators, there's no difference between public and private property. So we understood that also for the city government was important not only to think about the public space, but to think about the private space, because public space is very little in comparison with private space. and because we could then influence households to improve in their space the life of pollinators, we start also to impact the way the whole city was encountering a way to deal with common problems of cities, such as waste or such as quality of soil and quality of air and other things.
Thank you. So I think we had two questions in the chat. So I think the first one was from Agnes. I don't know whether you'd prefer I read your question or if you'd like to take the floor to ask it directly.
You can read it. Thank you. Sorry, I can say it. Yeah, some pollinators are also transmitters of deadly diseases like mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And it's a very conflict of interest, and nature has a lot of parasites and like fleas, and I'm not only talking about domestic animals, which makes it quite complicated to differentiate biodiversity, good and bad biodiversity. How do you differentiate? Which would tell me in the second row, it's the problem of nature-culture dichotomy. You say nature is something green that grows in soil. Do you also integrate buildings, art, languages, or other stuff like this as nature, or is it only reserved? And this may also go for Victor as a question for only for non-human entities, because it's very complicated to say what's living or dead, or how do we attribute these rights?
Yeah.
Thank you. And
Well,
if it's good for humans or not.
yeah. So in the case of so going back to the way we plan for we start to deal with planning. We incorporated not only pollinators into our archetypical personas in order to gather information as how to change the city and improve the place, but also, for instance, the water drop. So the water drop was given the experience of the water drop was a purpose for change or change in the city. So we by using the water drop as a archetype, as a persona, as a political persona, we were able to propose important changes in the way we were dealing with water as a whole in the city. So what we learned from that is that we can use this not only water as a matter and singularizing water as a water drop. It's a very interesting resource for planning and for change in the place. So basically, in terms of citizenship, the only our only purpose or only let's say initiative was related to pollinators. And as you mentioned before, and I read it there as well in the chat, it's important to also use these kind of methodologies and these kind of trends to speak about a better relationship between our space and the different natural elements or elements of nature with which we share the space. So I agree with you that it is important to keep our capacity not to dominate but to interact and to prevent um, um, harmful interactions between elements of nature and humans, especially in places that we have been used to exclude nature. So this has a historical context. We use cities as a way to exclude nature from our daily life, and we think that we now are in the position of changing that purpose of cities, and also give the possibility of these places to recognize the fact that even if we build these places for us, we have been sharing the space with others. So we have to decide how are we going to do it, and what are the limits. And I think in the word of limits and interaction, you will find the possibility of ethically choosing what to do and what not to do.
Thanks. Victor, did you want to add anything to? Okay, cool. So I think maybe Sanjay, did you have a question that was related to this previous one?
Yeah, I'm just curious, Edgar. Ola. I was very, very curious in the context you were working in the jurisdiction of the city, but in terms of the same policies being implemented across cities in Costa Rica or elsewhere, especially because pollinators also migrate.
Yeah.
Whether we're looking at that and bioregioning as opportunities to expand the movement.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, cities are a political deed, so this is important to recall. So cities are not countries, but cities were there before countries. So cities are a very important testament of our existence. Probably it's the most important work of infrastructure that humanity has developed. So cities have a long story, and what I'm trying to say with that is that what happened in cities is important because it's the place where we live, and what we are discovering is, and this is interesting about birds. So birds have been able to penetrate the urban membranes all the time and be with us all the time, but we haven't really think about them as inhabitants of the city. So think about, you mentioned migration, and that is true, but think about a hummingbird in my city. He was born there, and he will die there. So the city is nature for him. And this is an important take of in this conversation. This place have the possibility of also think about the experience of the hummingbird in that place, and by doing that, producing a lot of change and a lot of change in other experiences of others, humans and non-humans. So what we discover by going in this line of thought, it's that cities are multidimensional, and there is a scale that is horizontal, that is more understandable for us, territory, but also the territory has a vertical scale that is the place where other systems interoperate with our system, and giving this reality a place in the administrative grammar, and giving this reality a place in the policy, and can bring us together to nature, and allowed us to live not in opposition to it, not as if we were not part, but to live with nature and live as nature. So basically, this is when we start to do this. In the same case of Victor, we didn't know nothing about what was happening in Ecuador or what was happening with the rights of nature movement. Actually, I start to listen about this important movement when I was not mayor anymore. And somebody called me from Italy and asked me, "What if you gave citizenship to pollinators, what kind of rights do they have?" And I said, well, they don't have any right, because we don't give rights in cities. We give recognition and conditions. And the reason why we recognize pollinators as citizens is because we regard citizenship to be not only a condition or a formality, but also an action, an activity. And pollinators behave in cities in the way that a good citizen will behave, giving back, producing life, producing opportunities for life to thrive. So basically, all the reasons were political reasons, and I believe that in the realm of this new challenge that we have of pushing forward for the rights of nature, the political recognition of elements of nature is, let's say, it's not the whole task, but it's an important step to finally give nature some capacity within the public policy. Meanwhile, we keep on pushing for the formalization of rights for those elements of nature.
Thank you very much for that response. I think there's a bit of a debate going along in the chat about anthropocentrism, and it seems quite close to what Victor was talking about. And so I don't know if you've had managed to read the the chat and would like to respond, Victor, or if you'd need a synthesis from maybe the person who asked the initial question.
Sorry, Rosie, I didn't get what your question.
Maybe Encore can raise the question and the debate explain the debate in the chat. There are several.
He can provoke.
About the necessary anthropocentric aspect of the right of nature, because it became important because human beings were in danger. So this is an interesting and important question about the rights of nature, probably. But Encore, I don't know if I pronounce your name well. Do you want to take the floor about that? But I think Sanjay, you were also in the debate. So if you want to add.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, sure, I can ask. Basically, the whole thesis is, and Victor, I know you were also talking about environmental law, right? Environmental law really is in the context, if you think about scientific, mechanistic, reductionist mindset, worldview, we're always sort of creating laws to protect, whether it's industry pollution. You first create the problem and then you say, oh, let's find ways to. Very Anthropocene, I think that is the genesis of the question. If that is the case, how can we move to a kind of different ecocentric view where isn't rights of nature sort of based still on existing framework, which is very Anthropocene, you know? And how do we shift to something which is more ecocentric? If I paraphrased Ankur, and it was a provocation he made, and there was a back and forth among us.
As far as I'm concerned, I think that actually I proposed Ankur to discuss separately, not today because it might take too much time. I never reasoned as, you know, in terms of being anthropocentric or ecocentric, and because you're in favor of rights of nature doesn't mean that you are anthropocentric, you know. You don't have to be ecocentric either, but it doesn't mean that you are against humans, because it's against the philosophy of it, actually. Because if you say that man and nature are one, then you cannot say I'm anthropocentric or I'm ecocentric. So, you know, so I think we should move past this discussion about being anthropocentric and ecocentric. Working for rights of nature, we, as Sanjay said, we are in a legal system where today, and Edgar also mentioned it, we don't have the same equality before law. And when it comes to the courts, what does the court decide? It has to decide between anthropocentric rights and nature, which is an object. So human, if they are not human rights in terms of, you know, as we conceive them being for the well-being of people, but property is a human right. See, so I think we should. So what we are not to say against, but what we want is give nature a chance in courts. Give natural elements a chance in courts when they are in balance. And today they don't weigh anything. They don't weigh anything as with their intrinsic value. Of course, you can, as Colin nicely put it, if saving nature can save also our own asses, then go for it. We don't have to, you know, we're not stopping from doing it because, oh no, I'm being anthropocentric because I do that. No, I think we should really, when I see court cases, so many court cases, the judge has to decide between two rights, and on one side there is no right. So he has to, in the legal system. So that's why I think that in the legal system we have to introduce a sort of equality of arms in front of the court. You know, today nature has no arms to fight against other existing laws and other existing rights, because property rights are there, commercial rights are there, company rights are there. A company has the right to cut the forest, but the forest doesn't have any right to be against being cut. So let's, you know, put some equality in this battle. Since there is a giving arms to those who don't have them, it's a very an actual topic, you know. So I think voila. So being anthropocentric, I mean, even if we not everything that comes from humans are bad. You know, that's because everything is human, and in that sense, even the discussion on rights of nature, law is a man-made thing. So we are discussing about a man-made thing. So there's nothing wrong being anthropocentric. At least, yeah. To be short, let's keep it that way.
Can I jump in? Okay, so yeah, I think this is a important thing to clarify. We are talking about human legal system that has a lot of importance for nature, because if nature keeps being excluded as a subject of law, that means if nature keeps, to say it even uglier, if nature keeps being an object in the law, so all the legal body that is created to protect nature will consider nature to be client of the regulation, let's say. So it will still consider nature to be an object to be used, and will regulate how to use it, but will not regulate the existence, the importance, the moral importance of the existence of those elements of nature. And this is something that is one of the reasons why the rights of nature is important, is because nature at this point, we know that nature can be a subject instead of an object, and that nature, or some elements of nature that each society could decide to regard them with rights, will then move on into the political hierarchy. And this is important because there is a difference between violating regulation or cessing the possibility of life in an element of nature. It's a completely different understanding from our moral point of view as humans.
If I may, just to expand on the provocation, summa diviso, I think it's a great way for me to rationalize. But if you look at property, it was considered an object. But going back in time, commons, right? Where does that fall? Our indigenous people normally have commons and it's owned by everyone. So I'm curious, what do you think of that? Would commons eventually be considered part of as a subject as well?
Well, there are some examples. One of those is very recent in Ecuador. Somebody from Ecuador there maybe knows better this story. This is a very important step towards the let's say the nuance of how to implement this kind of rights. So for what I know is Ecuador had a new law that will give zoning condition to 8 maritime miles, and that zoning condition will only allow that area to be for artisan fisheries to work on that area, which is a huge area. So basically, that went to the higher court because it was challenged by the industry, some industry, and finally, because of the condition of Ecuador of having the rights of nature as part of the constitution, that higher court declared that piece, let's call it that way, that piece of the ocean that was properly subject to be zoning for the purpose of the ocean itself and for the purpose of the community, local community of fishermen. So it's a important take about this idea that you presented of commons. It's not really calling that a common as we understand commons from the history, but it's a way of saying the rights of nature is giving this space a personal condition, a specific and distinguished condition that is basically the creation of or the materialization of that legal persona that we call a subject of law. Basically, another way of saying this for non-lawyers such as me is, and I like to use this term, is the term of political persona or moral persona. And that can be placed as a distinguishable condition of a certain element of nature or a place in nature.
So I think we have time for one last question. And there is one from Julia in the chat. I'm not sure she's still here, but I think we can still ask it because it's an interesting question. Oh no, she is here if you would like to ask it yourself.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, the question, which I think Victor very kindly started answering in the chat, was, do you have any thoughts on the successes of rights of nature in courts? Because I understand that there haven't been many successful cases beyond Ecuador, despite the diversity of different legal initiatives, and it would be great to hear more about the practicalities of drawn beyond the sort of ideological base of it. Thank you.
Victor?
Yeah, I can maybe try to answer that. I think, Julia, the answer is in the question. As long as rights of nature are in the realm of ideology, it won't work in courts. Ecuador has the chance to be the only country in the world whose constitution, if you remember the hierarchy of norms I showed earlier, it's the only country in the world that in its constitution that says that Pachamama is a legal person. So everything below must respect the constitution, and therefore in courts you have a chance of succeeding. Even in Ecuador, it hasn't worked always. It has worked a lot of times, but on one instance, when the Ecuadorian government decided to give oil exploiting permit in a natural park, well, the case failed even in front of the Constitutional Court. Rights of nature couldn't save the national park because it decided that there were so many interests. But in other cases, the same court has decided that you can't build a road because it is against rights of nature. You can't overfish because it is against rights of nature. There was a project of aquaculture, and they planned to cut a mangrove forest, and the Constitutional Court said no, because the mangroves have rights. So it's the only place where it can really work. In other places, in other countries, except for Spain now, and we see only citizen initiatives. A lot of citizen initiatives. Even in France, there are so many rivers who have made their declaration of rights and so on. But I mean, legally, they don't weigh anything, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Voilà.
I will say that even if you have, if nature has the possibility of being under the protection of a very specific declaration of rights, it will, and this is important because also it's an argument that we hear frequently, is that doesn't mean that that element of nature is going to improve or is going to be radically protected. The only thing, it's the same with us. I'm subject of rights, but I have a very different different life than other that has the same rights that I have, and that is because life is more complicated than those let's say than those manifestations of rights and those manifestations of the moral capacity of a society. But the important thing about rights is that it gives nature, in this case, a permanent condition of being in which nature will be able, with the help of policy, to improve and to implement its improvement in the time being, or the range of time that it requires. It's completely different as today, when we try to change by the way of a project that only will have a life span of 1 or 2 years, or maybe 3 or 4, but not a time span that is more convenient, let's call it that way, or more logical, or more natural to the natural improvement of a place. So basically, is the importance of the rights of nature is also that it fixed a minimum, a minimum that cannot be degraded, and gives at the same time the opportunity to have a longer period of time to implement what really is the what really to implement policy that at the end of the day is what is going to change things in the place. It's the example of the Mar Menor. The Mar Menor is protected for a long period of time. We don't know how much years, but maybe for many years. It's now protected, and now the whole system of governance of those rights of the Mar Menor, as they are implemented, will bring the Mar Menor to a quality of life that will be more and more high or higher with each let's say with each policy or each project that will be implemented for those purposes.
Thank you. That's really insightful, and kind of I've been reflecting on what's the best way to give effect to the rights of nature, whether it's in sort of legal standing, or whether that's actually the change that's going to happen in the level of broader environmental governance and policy. Like, do we need, I guess, yeah, a lot of thoughts on whether we need more laws, or whether we need leaders who are willing to embody in action the values of rights of nature in policy and governance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for this last question. And I think we've come to the end of this forum with our 2-hour limit. And so I just wanted to take a few seconds to wrap up this forum. So thank you everybody for coming, and the interesting talks and discussions. And a special thank you to Victor and Edgar for coming and presenting your work and experience. And so if ever you, the audience, you have any other questions that didn't get answered today, don't hesitate to contact us or the speakers directly. And so we'll publish the recording on our website and YouTube channel, so we'll notify you when that happens in the next few days. And we'll also send you a reading list related to today's forum. And last but not least, you can find all our information on LinkedIn. Our page is called the Pathways Initiative, and we've also got a website where you can subscribe to our newsletter. And so yeah, just thank you so much for coming, and we can't wait to see you at our future events, offline or online. Thank you. Bye, everybody.